Thanks for being here. ICOM, the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration, engages in courageous spiritual, multicultural action in solidarity with immigrants and refugees to achieve justice and stand up to systems of oppression. We gather this morning at the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building to stand in solidarity with our immigrant neighbors who are in detention and face deportation. We come to this place to show our opposition to immigration policies that dehumanize our neighbors and separate families. The Whipple Federal Building and every existing colonial structure at Fort Snelling was built on land stolen from the Dakota tribal nations. Countless Dakota people were displaced, imprisoned, and murdered here by colonialists and by the United States military. Our hearts are heavy with the knowledge that many of our ancestors were responsible for these atrocities. We hold action prayer vigils here as a way of honoring our Dakota sisters and brothers, and because the Whipple Building is a regional headquarters for the Department of Homeland Security, as well as Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE's objective is to arrest, detain, and deport immigrants. That is their mission, and as such, the very existence of ICE is contrary to our values, which call us to strive for the liberation of every oppressed person. We are also here to acknowledge the truth that immigration policy and the borders themselves are man-made constructs which are used to justify and deny the dignity and humanity of the native peoples of this land. By these policies, the Dakota people in Minnesota have been made illegal on land that they have occupied for generations. Hence, we must acknowledge the sacred history of this land and the stewards of this land who continue to fight to protect it and to be recognized as fully human by our government today. We are here to say that no one is illegal on stolen land. Leading our vigil today are representatives from the North Star Alliance. Thank you very much for being here.
We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. Bringing the light, we are bringing in the light of God. 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 We are praying, we are praying, we are praying in the light of God. We are praying, we are praying, we are praying in the light of God. Living in the love. We are living in the love of God. 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 We are living, we are living, yeah, we are living in the love of God. We are living, we are living, we are living in the love of God. Moving in the power. We are moving in the power of God. 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 We are moving, we are moving, we are moving in the power of God. We are moving We are moving, we are moving in the power of God. Dancing in the joy. We are dancing in the joy of God. 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 We are dancing, dancing, we are dancing, dancing, we are dancing in the joy of God. We are dancing, dancing, we are dancing, dancing, we are dancing in the joy of God.
Good morning. My name is Craig King. I'm the VIgil coordinator here along with Pam Brethorst, who opened us up. I'm very, very pleased to have you here, and more pleased that finally it's above zero on our VIgil day. For those of you who are here January and February, blessings to you for being here, and you know what I mean. I've also been a volunteer with ICOM since 2017, the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration. And as part of the ICOM, I've been proud to be one of the founding organizations in the formation of the North Star Alliance, who's collectively hosting our VIgil here today. We are now a collection of over 60 nonprofits, immigrant-led, immigrant-serving, civil rights organizations, labor organizations, and municipalities, and faith communities, the Episcopal Church being an important anchor for us, who are standing at the state legislature saying that Minnesota, because of our values and our economics and just who we are as a nation and state of immigrants, should be a welcoming place to immigrants, should not be a place that terrorizes immigrants, and should not be a place that uses, most of all, our state resources that are in a budget created by our values to target, imprison, and funnel our immigrant neighbors into the hands of immigration and federal immigration enforcement. Not only is it a violation of our values and bad for our economy, it's not our job as a state. We don't set immigration policy, and we shouldn't be enforcing immigration policy with people whose job is supposed to be serving and protecting the communities that they live in. And so the North Star Alliance sprung out of the Sanctuary State Coalition, which was formed in 2019, again, with the Episcopal Church being a key member, primarily out of faith communities who had shared values around providing sanctuary and welcoming the stranger, along with the ACLU and other civil rights organizations. In 2021, the Minnesota Sanctuary State Coalition introduced what was the Sanctuary State Bill, which is a pretty targeted bill aimed at ending contracts between county sheriffs who hold ICE detainees on behalf of the federal government, because that is within our discretion to decide what to do with, again, our state and county resources. That bill did not pass in 2021, but in 2023, we did see a wave of immigrant welcoming legislation passed at the state capitol, notably, for many of you, I'm sure, are aware, driver's licenses for all, which many faith communities, thanks to all of you who are part of that 20-plus year campaign to restore that right that was taken away by Governor Tim Pawlenty, to allow the state to decide who gets to drive legally on our roads. Again, not a federal function. So the Sanctuary State Coalition in 2023, on the heels of that positive energy, expanded and grew and became the North Star Alliance under the guidance of a fantastic organizer who brought immigrant-led organizations into the middle and center of our work. So going from Sanctuary State to North Star Alliance is not just rebranding. It was a growth. It was an expansion of who is at the table, who's deciding what the right policies are, and expanding not just beyond faith communities like the Episcopal Church and ICOM and Jewish Community Action, but now bringing in immigrant-serving, immigrant-led organizations who you'll hear from some today, notably CAAL, notably CAPI USA, and the group that I'm going to speak really briefly on today. So you'll hear from a couple of the organizations that are now at the leadership table of the North Star Alliance. We'll hear more about the faith values behind the formation of it from our keynote speaker. And then you'll get a call to action of something that we urgently need your help to do tomorrow. So thank you for being here again. My name is Greg King. I am the VIgil coordinator at ICOM, but I'm also on the board of the Philippine Center in Minnesota. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. My mother moved here to go to college, and the Filipino Minnesotan community is the community that raised me and is the one that in 2016 I wanted to stand with in the face of that wave of anti-immigrant hate, which I'm afraid has only gotten more frightening. If you are in the immigrant community and looking around, if we think back a generation or two, we are actually probably all immigrant communities here. We don't have good representation here from our Dakota residents. So the way that I can advocate for my community, which is a pretty small one, maybe about the 7th largest Asian community in Minnesota, the Filipino Minnesotan community, about 22,000 strong, is through a group called the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, which allows smaller communities and Asian communities to coalesce, share power, and go to the state legislature where we don't have the votes, maybe to sway folks individually, but we have shared values that we can lift up. And one of those values is protecting our immigrant communities. Because even though most Asians, like the Filipino community, came here under a program, often a visa program, sometimes we have a huge, powerful, and amazing, refugee communities from Southeast Asia, and have status. What we know, and hopefully everybody here is paying attention to, is that status doesn't give you protection. When anti-immigrant things are happening, everybody in my community is vulnerable. Yes, there are people in my community who have overstayed a visa and are now technically undocumented. Most of them have been here decades, have families, citizen children, and citizen communities that depend on them. There are people here who are here on work visas, teachers and healthcare providers brought in to do some of the most vital and important jobs for our society, but have very little rights if their employer or spouse abuses them, because if that visa goes away, they lose everything. Many Filipinos have invested everything into purchasing the education and the visa they need to get here. But even people who are legal permanent residents, we've just seen one picked up in New York protesting for Palestinian humanity, who was a green card holder and a legal permanent resident. There's actually talk of deporting even citizens to some of these detention sites. So, and beyond all of that, my mother is an elderly Asian woman, an amazing and strong woman, but when anti-immigrant hate is unleashed, they don't take time to ask your status at the grocery store or in the parking lot. And if you're an elderly Asian woman, as we saw during COVID, just being that is a risk when there's an anti-immigrant fervor. So I'm proud to be standing here today as a member of the Filipino community. I'm honored to represent the Coalition of Asian American Leaders at the table of the North Star Alliance. And then I'd like to invite the Alliance Director, Silva, from CAPI USA, to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Greg. Again, my name is Sarah, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm not really that great at speaking. So, again, Sarah Silva with CAPI USA, and then with the North Star Alliance. Good. Okay, thank you. You're giving me signals back there about the mic. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I really, really appreciate this turnout. This is amazing. I've been here once or twice before, and it's been amazing to see everyone here, and the generosity of your time, and as well as the passion and the emotion behind all of this. Right. A lot of the times growing up, I didn't really congregate too much with the Caucasian or white churches because it didn't make sense to me. And sometimes the Bible still doesn't make sense to me in English. But I'm really trying to, really engage in the emotion from a different culture. And the more I integrate myself into the religious, not religious, but like faith-based community, I find myself noticing that faith has no language, right? It's just an emotion. It's just a feeling of gratitude and love, because it's in its purest form. So I really thank you guys for that. A lot of the times that's missed in the community, and it's bringing back it's really cold. It's bringing back humanity into who we are. And with that being said, I didn't really write a long speech or anything, but I do want to mention a verse that I really appreciate. It's Romans 13:10, and it reads, "Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." Amen. Today, I want to reflect on a verse that speaks the foundation of how we should live and treat one another. In just a few words, this verse captures the essence of justice, compassion, and community. Love is just not an emotion. It is an action, a responsibility, and a guiding principle. When you love your neighbors, you do not exploit them. We do not ignore their suffering, and we do not act out of selfish ambition. Instead, we uplift, we protect, and we seek the good in others. Thank you. Amen. And with that being said, I just want to wrap up and just, again, thank you all so much for being here. For the individuals who have supported the driver's license for all, the work with the North Star Alliance, and the work that happened last year and the support that we received. We really thank you all. It was a really hard time, just trying to be public facing in a space that we already knew you're going to lose in most of the time. But it was really nice to see. Actually, it feels really good to go back to the Capitol and people see you and you're kind of like, I told you so. So, but the work will always continue. And no matter what happened last year or this year, again, it is the community that really pushes us through everything, through thick and thin. And it's the community who has always showed up for me and who has raised me. So thank you for that.
So I'm Mark Joffe, and I'm here on behalf
Is that microphone on?
Is that working?
Oh, no.
Is that working? It's working. Great. I'm here on behalf of ACTC, Asylum Coalition for Transition Twin Cities. And we are principally an organization that helps immigrants by providing services and accompaniment. We do two types of things. We help individuals. We also help groups trying to connect people who need things, as well as people who have things. And we think we do a pretty good job at what we do. So the question I was asked is, why did we join the North Star Alliance? And we realized that that wasn't enough. That it's not enough because our neighbors need protection from ICE overreach. It's not enough because our neighbors have a right to seek the protections of law enforcement without fear. It's not enough because our neighbors have a right to receive an education and to receive healthcare services without the fear of being apprehended. And it's not enough because we all have a right to be treated humanely and respectfully. So that's why we're part of the North Star Alliance.
And I think we have a song now from Chad.
Thanks for listening. Was in another was in another lifetime, one of toil and blood, when blackness was a virtue and the road was full of mud. I came in from the wilderness, the creature void of form. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from storm. And if I pass this way again, you can rest assured I'll always do my best for her. On that I give my word. In a world of steel and death and men who are fighting to be warm, come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Not a word was spoke between us. There was little risk involved. Everything up to that point had been left unresolved. Try imagining a place where it is always safe and warm. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. I was burned out from exhaustion, buried in the hail, poisoned in the bushes, blown out on the trail, hunted like a crocodile, ravaged in the corn. Come in, she said, I give you shelter from the storm. Suddenly I turned around and she was standing there with silver bracelets on her wrists and flowers in her hair. She walked up to me so gracefully and took my crown of thorns. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Now there's a wall between us, something has been lost. I took too much for granted, got my signals crossed. Just to think that it all began on a long forgotten morn. Come in, said I'll give you shelter from the storm. Well, the deputy walks on hard nails and the preacher rides a mount. But nothing really matters much, it's doom alone that counts. And the one-eyed undertaker, he blows a futile horn. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. I've heard newborn babies wailing like a mourning dove. An old man with broken teeth, stranded without love. Do I understand your question, man? Is it hopeless and forlorn? Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. In a little hilltop village, they gambled for my clothes. I bargained for salvation and they gave me a lethal dose. I offered up my innocence. God repaid the scorn. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Well, I'm living in a foreign country, but I'm bound to cross the line. Beauty walks the razor's edge. Someday I'll make it mine. If I could only turn back the clock to when God and her were born. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm.
Wow, thank you, Chad. That was fantastic. I'm Rex McKee. I'm a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and I'm currently at St. John the Baptist in Minneapolis. I've been on the leadership table with the Minnesota Coalition and now North Star. It's been fun walking side by side with Greg and all of you all these years, and I'm really, really excited that you are all here this morning. And I'm more excited to be able to introduce our Bishop, Bishop Loya, to speak to us. It's great to have him here. Bishop.
Thanks, Rex. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's an honor and a privilege and a great gift to all be together in this moment. There's a story that some of you have heard, and I've been thinking a lot about it in the last couple of months. Almost 10 years ago, exactly at this time, I was walking through a 3,000-year-old tunnel under the city of Jerusalem alone. I was in water up above my knees as I was walking through it, and it was as dark as midnight in the tunnel. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. And as I walked through that tunnel, eventually I started to see some lights that were bouncing around on the walls of the tunnel up ahead of me in the distance. And I could hear a noise, but I had no idea what it was. It was loud and cacophonous, and it sounded like really loud music playing somewhere in the distance. And as I got closer and closer to the lights, I realized that what I was seeing and hearing were the flashlights from a group of young people that was walking through the tunnel a little bit ahead of me. And the lights were their flashlights bouncing around on the walls. And the noise that I had been hearing echoing off the walls of the tunnel was the noise of them singing and laughing and dancing as they made their way through the tunnel. And as soon as I knew that there was that group of young people in front of me, all of my fear disappeared. And I joined them, and we spent the last little bit of the tunnel walking together until we came out on the other side. Life in America right now often feels like we're walking through a dark and scary tunnel alone.
Amen.
But if you look around at this group that's gathered here this morning, you'll see that there are lights. And our job in this moment, and this is not going to be a short journey through this tunnel, and our job in this moment and in the months and years to come is to look at the lights, that we have in each other, so that we can be that light to people who are afraid, to people who are targeted by dehumanizing rhetoric and hateful policies, by people who are pushed aside to the margins. You know, for those of us who are followers of Jesus, the thing about Jesus is that when you look at people who are targeted by dehumanizing rhetoric and pushed to the margins, like, that's where our guy hung out. And that's where we're called to hang out in these months and in these years, looking at the light in one another so that we can be the light out in the world. Someone who many of us know as a good friend in this place, Bishop Mary Ann Buddy, preached a pretty good sermon a couple of months ago. I don't know if you heard about it or not. Maybe you did. And one of the things that she did in that sermon was she asked the president to show mercy. And I can't control what the president of the United States is going to do, but I can control what I'm going to do and how I'm going to be. And I'm going to follow Bishop Buddy's lead, and I'm going to be a person of mercy. Yes. And all of us here have an opportunity in a world that is marked by vengeance and violence and retaliation to be people of mercy. All of us who are here have the opportunity in a world that is marked by exclusion to be people of embrace. That's what my predecessor, Henry Benjamin Whipple, whose name is now in a pretty cruel irony on this building, in a Minnesota that was marked by exclusion, he and the people who followed him did their best to be people of embrace. In a world where leaders are always trying to point the spotlight on themselves, we can be people who walk humbly with one another. So this coalition that we're part of is diverse and represents people from all kinds of different backgrounds. And we may come from different places, and we may believe different things, and we may walk slightly different paths, but we will walk together. And in the months and in the years to come, our job is to walk humbly together, to be the light in a world that feels like that dark tunnel, to engage in singing and dancing as acts of resistance and defiance, until our whole world is just flooded with mercy, with love, and with justice. Amen. God bless all of you. It's so great to be with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Bishop. So before we end with our last song, I want to read a prayer reflection. This is from yet another Episcopal Bishop, Steve Charleston, who's a retired Bishop Choctaw, lives in Oklahoma now, but at one point lived in Minnesota, taught at Luther College, and was elected a bishop from Minnesota. And he writes, "We look to God and we look to one another. We are on the migration of songs, timeless and ever new. So dream on, even in this world of hard realities, even when the future seems to be clouded, dream on. Let your imagination continue to see what might be, what could happen, what can be changed. Dream on. For by your dreaming, you are not hiding from some harsh truth, but giving yourself a glimpse of the alternative, giving those around you a star to see in the night. Dream on, because your dream is hope. It is an affirmation of possibilities, a defiance of diminished life, a vision sacred and healing. Dream on, for from your dreams, a new creation will be made." Amen. And now we have a closing song from
We shall overcome. Oh, in my heart, I will believe. We shall overcome someday. Walk hand in hand. We walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. To live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We're not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Oh, in my heart, I we believe that we shall overcome someday. The whole wide world around. Whole wide world around. Oh, keep in mind, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Hey.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad.